with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Aaron Page.
All interviews presented on the Remedy Revolution podcast are designed to provide information and inspiration only. Guests of the podcast may present opinions and anecdotes which are solely their own. And as always, before beginning any treatment protocol, please consult with your preferred medical provider. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and today's guest is a repeat guest, actually, and also a very dear friend of mine. Thank you for coming on, Saundra Trewick.
Thank you, Erin. I'm so happy to be here. You're always just a joy to talk to because it's talking to an old friend. So
yeah, exactly. So Saundra, last time you were on, and I would encourage all of our listeners to go back and listen to her previous episode. It's one of our top episodes, pretty much always, is about her Oklahoma donkey dairy. It tells the story of her daughter and how donkey milk really brought her back from a very severe case of pandas. And so Saundra and her family currently operate the Oklahoma Donkey Dairy. And the story we're going to tell today is similar to, well, it runs along the same vein with regard to farming and ranching and all of the things that they are doing at the Oklahoma Donkey Dairy. Before I get into this story, I do want to mention that the annual Hee Haw for Health at Saundra's farm will be held on September 21st. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But for those of you that are interested, please go to oklahomadonkey.com, and we'd love to have you join us. I will be there. Saundra, of course, will be there. The amazing donkeys. One of our previous guests, Teresa Holler, will also be there speaking. So please, if you feel called to do so, we'd love to have you join us. And it's just, Saundra puts on such a beautiful event. She was an interior designer. A lot of people don't know that. And so she has a really amazing eye for creating a space that's very warm and comfortable for all these amazing families. But something we're going to talk about today is a little bit alarming. I do want to preface this by letting people know that some of the various things that are going on within our environment and within our government are a little frightening, unfortunately. But I do think there's hope. And I do think that the best thing we can do right now is to tell these stories and get the word out and help people understand the impact that they might have moving forward. So Saundra, I'm going to just kind of open it up talking about the Biosludge humanure conversation, because I think that's kind of where a lot of these issues begin, in addition to something else we're going to talk about in a little bit. So why don't I hand the floor over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about what's happening both in the state of Oklahoma as well as countrywide.
Well, thank you. Okay, first, for the nonprofit event, they have to go to heehawforhealth.com, and it's all spelled out. OklahomaDonkeyDairy.com takes you to our skincare site and all of that, which can take you to the nonprofit, but it gets confusing. So, all right, so we're not the parents that sit back and just accept a diagnosis that is unheard of in our family. And now we have 2 children with autoimmune disease that are supposedly rare, and different autoimmune diseases that have never been in our families. So I am always wondering what is going on in our environment that our children are exposed to, or that we are exposed to, that is creating this huge explosion in childhood illnesses. And I don't want to just accept, like you, we don't just treat the symptoms. We want to get to the root cause and eradicate whatever these triggers are. So we moved to the country. We started Oklahoma Donkey Dairy. We are very barefoot outside, natural. I was crunchy before she got sick, grinding my own wheat flour, doing all the things. And this took me to the next level, and milking donkeys and all of that. And I discovered that farmers, and I grew up on a wheat farm in Kansas. I had never had any idea this was happening. But farmers in every state except Maine are accepting free sludge, also called humanure, also called biosolids, which is sort of a a name they gave it so it sounds benign. There's a documentary called Biosludged that people can watch that's very informative. And it's all of the waste, industrial waste, human waste, everything flushed down every toilet, everything flushed down industrial toilets, hospitals, whatnot, goes into the same drain, goes to wastewater treatment plants, and then they minimally treat it, put some lime on it, take it out in trucks and dump it on farmland, and then disc it in. And that's what's growing food in our state, even food for children in schools. And it's horrific because it's not just human poop. And when they call it human manure, that gives people the impression that it is just like poop, like cow manure or donkey manure, and it's not. So, I mean, there's all kinds of pharmaceuticals, COVID, flu, like strep. There was a little boy that died of a staph infection when he rode his bicycle through it. So that, and like most things, if you get involved in a lawsuit over this and it's determined that you are in the right, then you get more money if you shut up about it and do a non-disclosure. And so the stories about what actually is happening to people and having to prove that your lung cancer or your chronic headaches or your throwing up when you go outside is actually related to this, that it's pretty much impossible. Just like with the other issues that we see in children, you can say this happened at the pediatrician's office, and then my child stopped speaking, but you have to prove it. And so it's the burden of proof on the injured. And unfortunately, now one of the things that's happening is PFAS, PFAS, or PFOAS, which is forever chemicals that are in the movie Dark Waters. They are discovering that that is in the sludge, and they know it's in the sludge, and they are not telling the farmers that there's any problem. They are covering it up and still telling these farmers it's safe. In our state, and I would not be surprised if in states across the United States, they were trying to push legislation that actually exempted the cities and the wastewater treatment companies and the farmer themselves that took the sludge from all liability for PFAS contamination. So the farmers are saying, they're being told by their legislator, oh, this protects you. But the truth is, their farm's going to be worthless, and their neighbors will likely be ruined because it gets in the air, it gets in the water, it drifts. And you're not going to sue the farmer that was ruined because he's worthless now. But you won't be able to sue the city or the wastewater treatment plant that did it knowingly. And we have video footage of the executive director of the DEQ that's supposed to be protecting us stating, well, we need to protect them from liability because they have to handle this. There's ways to handle this that do not involve putting it on farmland.
So, are there any regulators at all that are looking at the contents of some of this sludge, or is it just kind of the wild, wild west out there?
It is the Wild West, and it has been for years. There was an EPA whistleblower who wrote a book about this, and I would highly recommend getting that book. I'll tell you, and you can put it in the comments or in the links. But anyone that speaks out, they're silenced, and they come for you, and our government is weaponized against us. And the environmental groups are not speaking out. And, we were talking about me being an environmental activist. That's actually, I'm a survivalist. I want our farm to survive and thrive. I want our children to survive and thrive. I want them to have a future, and I want them to have green grass and healthy food and all of these things that they're taking away from the next generation. So I heard that the Romans would do something called salting the land. When they would conquer a people, they would salt the land so that they couldn't grow anything afterward. And that's what our government is doing right now. With Humaner, there are millions of acres at stake, and they're continuing to apply to more and more and more acreages, which they know that it has these forever chemicals in it. I mean, forever chemicals are actually in toilet paper. You can buy toilet paper without it, but it's in toilet paper. So, beyond all the other chemicals and all the pharmaceuticals and everything else that's being flushed, your toilet paper has these forever chemicals, and it's bioaccumulative. So it builds up over time more and more and more. Then it gets down into the aquifer and contaminates the water. And That's what's happening outside of Fort Worth. There's farmers that are in lawsuits now. There's a group called PEER that is suing the EPA for negligence, essentially, and not warning farmers of the risk. But what's truly terrifying to me, and this really needs to be brought to light, is the EPA just this last spring put in PFAS forever chemical regulations on the amount of PFAS in drinking water, which I'm all for. We should have clean water. We should not have forever chemicals in the water we're drinking. And so I started looking into this, and there's millions, billions of dollars, I can't remember the numbers, that our government is going to pay in grants to clean up drinking water. So the cities and the towns that have water systems can apply for these grants. And as long as there's still money in the collective money bank, then they can get the money to upgrade their water systems for their people that are drinking city water, and they will get a PFAS filtration system put in for all their people. It's like, great, they did this. Like I don't like that our tax dollars are paying for this, but I don't want children drinking toxic water. And it's like 4 parts per trillion. That's the equivalent of 4 grains of sand in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. I'm not a scientist that's going to tell you what's safe or what's not safe, but this is what the EPA has said. So I started digging into this legislation because I'm thinking, well, they're dumping biosolids that they know is toxic with PFAS on farmers, and farmers are not on city water. They're on a well. And where's the money for the farmers that are harmed to put in a $30,000 and $50,000 filtration system for their animals, for their irrigating their crops, for watering their gardens? And I dug farther and farther into this EPA rule, and I finally found there were a few $1,000,000 that was designated for rural and well water. Started reading into that. It specifically says this money is not to be used to clean up the aquifer. This is not to be used to provide filtration system for people that are dependent on the aquifer. It's to be used for the government to hire people to come out and test your water. And then if city water is available, to connect you up to city water. Well, anyone who's ever paid a city water bill for watering their little yard knows that farmers cannot pay the price of water to water livestock or irrigate their farm or water their plants in their organic garden. So what it's doing is effectively going to shut down farmers across the United States, even farmers that did not take sludge, if their water's contaminated.
So they're essentially creating a reliance again on city government. And, it makes me really think about, for many years, most of my listeners probably are aware of this, the government has subsidized farming of particular crops. So corn, soy, canola, those kinds of things, which has led to great detriment within the human health outcomes, because we are now trying to find ways, because we have excessive amounts of those particular products, trying to find ways to stick those ingredients into anything and everything we possibly can. Again, because it's more profitable for farmers when they do receive a government subsidy. So we know that their profit margins are incredibly low already. Then we're going to burden them with additional water bills, which would be absolutely devastating when we're talking about, extremely low profit margin for a substantial amount of hard work that a lot of people, frankly, just aren't equipped to do these days, nor do they want to. They would rather have the cushy, 9 to 5.
And
So,
yeah, go. So with that, I forgot to mention that in our area and in most areas, all of the traditional fertilizers are going through the roof. And when they take this humaner, it's free. And they get their land disc twice for free. So they save on fuel, they save on labor, and they save on fertilizer, thousands of dollars. So I'm in this difficult spot where we have farmers who think I'm trying to take away their free fertilizer, and they hate us. And they're telling me that I'm the bad guy and cussing me out, and we know who you are, and you're the crazy donkey lady, and I'm trying to protect you. The government that told you this is safe is lying to you, and it's a very difficult spot to be in. And this is what's happening across the country where they're told it's safe by the government, just like other things we all know about. And they believe the government, and the government is poisoning them.
In your opinion, what is the best way to help educate some of these farmers who, again, are stuck between a rock and a hard place? Because, as you mentioned, they're receiving something for free, reducing their costs. And because of that very low profit margin, they might not be able to survive at the cost of fertilizer at this point. So, obviously, it would be fantastic if everybody would create, biodynamic farms and do all of those amazing, wonderful things for our soils. But I don't see that being a really rapid turnover, nor do I see that being a probability anytime in the very near future. So, what do you think needs to happen in order for those conversations to open their eyes, even just a little bit, to understanding the dangers of putting this biosludge on their crops? Is
Well,
liability enough? I mean, if they're threatened with liability, is that even something that might turn their heads?
the thing is, I don't want to sue a farmer. Nobody wants to sue a farmer. Nobody wants to sue their neighbor. This is not where we want to go with this. They're not the ones at fault here. They are being sold a bill of goods that is not true. The real issue as well is you're saying, how are they going to make it in this economy? Well, one of the problems is they're getting a free product, free fertilizer, and their neighbor is not. So their neighbor's growing it with paying for fertilizer, doing all the work themselves, all of these things. And they're selling their bale of hay for $45 and having a very small profit margin. Meanwhile, this other guy is selling his bale of hay for $45 and he has a huge profit margin because he got free fertilizer. So all these other farmers who are doing it, even conventionally with regular fertilizer, we're not even talking about the regenerative farmers. If they would add their voice to the mix and say, hey, we need proper labeling where not even just talking organic, but this product here was grown in sludge. Take your chances if you buy it. And same thing goes for the carrots that are grown in greenhouses in human and industrial waste and sold to schools. I'm appalled. We are one of 13 states that actually allows food for human consumption to be grown in sludge. A lot of the other states allow hay and, cotton and things like that to be grown in sludge. But even if you're just growing hay that you're feeding to your cattle, they're forever chemicals for a reason. It's taken up into the plants, then taken up into the beef, and then taken up into all of these other things. It doesn't go away. It's just recycled through the product. So it's all ending up on your plate. And until the consumers say, I want to know the truth, kind of like the organic movement and truly the regenerative, I would love for them to get involved. There's just silence from this whole movement, and they're not addressing this. And the organic movement is not addressing this. And we really need more help. We need people to be a voice and to say and start asking farmers, even if it's not required, what did you grow this in? I mean, and there's very few grocery stores that refuse to take anything grown in biosolids. Very few, even the natural ones.
So there's a secondary issue that you've just recently opened my eyes to. And, you know, I think we had this conversation offline, but I'll share with our listeners too. It's very interesting to me how the whole green movement, which by the way, I am all for clean soil, clean air, clean water, all of those things are incredibly important to me, vitally important to the future of humanity. So I think anybody that has a child would want to look into some of these practices. But a lot of the green movement focuses more on things like transitioning to electric vehicles. And, we just don't have the infrastructure, which is a major problem because, I once saw a video of it was a plant. They were creating their brand new EV. They bring it out, they roll it out, and then they plug it in, and everybody's there celebrating and, cutting the ribbon and all of those things. And a reporter comes up and says, "So, where is the electricity coming from to power your car?" And they sat there stunned, and they said, "Oh, it's on the city power grid." And they said, "Well, where does that come from?" And they said, "Well, primarily coal." So, we need to have these conversations about, we need the infrastructure first. The infrastructure is vital in order to have all of these things if that's what we want to do. But unfortunately, some of the things being proposed, again, just there's really not a lot of research done into any of these types of things. And it's a little bit frightening once we kind of start to go down that rabbit hole. So tell me a little bit about what you've uncovered with regard to wind turbines and I think what is it called?
Carbon,
Sequestration?
yeah, carbon capture and sequestration. So, we could go backwards down the rabbit hole of, are these things actually green?
Hmm.
When you start looking at what they're doing in China, the whole entire areas that are turning into toxic waste places from mining for these things that we need to make all of these batteries, the lithium, the cobalt, all of these issues, the human trafficking that's happening. Like, we use these elite products and feel good about ourselves, but we're not looking at what it took to make those products and who we harmed and the areas we harmed in the process. I mean, one small aspect of that would be these giant wind turbine blades that everyone sees. Maybe not in the Midwest, we see these giant wind turbine blades being taken down the highway. Well, those are made with balsa wood on the inside. So they are decimating balsa wood forests in order to make these blades. Nobody's talking about that. And I got involved. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, you're just against everything." I'm not against everything. I'm against things that are harming the health of our future generations and the health of the world that we, as a Christian, we're supposed to steward the earth and care for it. So I'm really offended that this whole, if you care about the world, you're supposed to be liberal, crazy person, according to a lot of people. And I'm in Oklahoma. I'm like, I can care about the earth and it's my job. If I believe in God and I believe he created this, I'm supposed to take care of it. And so we're supposed to take care of each other. And, if you give a little child a cup of water in his name, you're doing the will of God. If I give him a cup of water that's poisoned, what is that? That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So my parents reached out to me and they said, "Oh, we're just sick. They're planning a wind turbine development in our community." And I grew up on a farm in Kansas, and they were concerned about the blinking red lights and how they're ugly. And the farm where I grew up would be surrounded by them. And I knew immediately this is so much more than that, because we can't drive through them without feeling sick. And I started digging into more of this and why this is. Well, there's something called infrasound, which affects a lot of people, not everyone. It actually was researched to be a weapon, but it doesn't affect everyone, so it's not a great weapon. But infrasound, shadow flicker. So these giant, now they're making them, I think, 600 feet tall plus. And when the sun is setting, those blades are going around and round and round, and it's creating a strobe effect that then casts a shadow over homes. And anyone in the shadow of these wind turbines, especially if they have seizure disorders or they're autistic or they have, attention deficit type things, that can really affect them in a very terrible way and trigger epileptic seizures. I have another friend who's pediatrician told her, because her child has a heart condition, she cannot live within 5 miles of wind turbines because it will affect their heart. It affects people's hearts. It affects all different aspects of health, anxiety, sleeplessness. And these are stories that are coming out, and it's horrible. I had a lady from Texas reach out to me and she had seen the signs. Oh, then I got involved in Oklahoma. We did stop those. Backing up a little bit, we did stop Humaner in our town, in our city limits, and we took bills to our state legislature trying to also regulate Humaner on a state level, which unfortunately we have state legislators who use Humaner and are protecting it and have killed every bill we have put in with our senator because they want to keep using their free sludge, I guess. And so we also got involved in Kansas and we stopped the wind turbine development there and also industrial solar. So industrial solar typically comes in with wind turbines and they are blanketing hundreds and thousands of acres of productive farmland with solar panels. And so you've got the wind turbines, and I started researching that because I knew about the forever chemicals as well. And the area where my parents were has the water already has salt plumes from oil and gas industry years ago. If those salt plumes get displaced, it will be terrible for the water supply there. So we're looking at the water and the vibrations from these wind turbines. They have these pylons that go down into the earth because they're 600 feet tall. They're not just floating on the ground. So you have all this concrete, all this rebar, all of these understructure underground that is holding these wind turbines so they just don't fall over. And the vibrations then go underground once they come online. I spoke to a woman in Texas who said that since the wind turbine development went in around her beef cattle, which she has raised beef for 30 years, she knows what she's doing. All of a sudden, the wind turbines all come on, and all of her cows are now having babies that are the size of dogs. And I said, do you mean like a big dog? And she said, no, we're talking about a small dog. And I said, do they ever get big and make weight? And she said, no, they never get to be weight. So they're like miniature cows, apparently, now that these cows are having. And then we're hearing stories about people who their animals are infertile. They're just not breeding back. And milk content is going down at dairies and it's stressing out these animals. And there's electric currents that are going underground from the wind turbines. And then what I also found was PFAS, these forever chemicals, that in research that was published online, one of the things they use those in is the wind turbine blade coating. So these blades eventually degrade as they're spinning through the air. There's sand and all of the debris that's hitting the leading edge of the blades starts to break down. So these microplastics, and there's research on the BPA that's in those in Europe. And in Europe, they reached out to me and they saw my research on the PFAS in the blades, and they were actually researching the BPA. Well, the wind turbine people came back and said, oh, don't worry about the BPA. The coating is what's coming off. Well, there's research out there that says the coating has forever chemicals. So what we're doing is effectively putting these forever chemicals, spreading them around the land through the wind turbine blades, through the humaner, and through, then we're wiping out swaths of land with solar. And it seems that then along with that comes Bitcoin mining and data mining, which that's all part of this whole agenda. People mistakenly believe that we need more power and we're replacing coal and we're replacing gas, oil and gas. That's not what this is about. This is all because we need, last thing I read was, I believe, 30% more. There's projections how much more energy we need in order to power AI, in order to power digital currency. And all of that is essentially to enslave humanity. And I know that people will label me a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, they need to start looking at 15-minute cities. And, every time you do your AI images, you're sucking up tons of energy for AI. And we're feeding this beast that requires more and more and more energy. So the Bitcoin mining, the data mining, the AI industry needs more energy. So they're not building all of this in order to power your home and replace these other industries. It's on top of it. And Biden's Inflation Reduction Act has a lot of money in there for green energy. So backing up even more, I discovered something called hydrogen energy, and they've tried this in California. They do have vehicle manufacturers that make hydrogen, and they do these ads, and it shows the car, and out of the car is coming water vapor. So it's perfectly clean energy. There's nothing to worry about with hydrogen. Well, it's 20 times as explosive as gasoline, but don't worry about that. And in order to make hydrogen, they're calling it green hydrogen because if they use wind and solar to make the hydrogen, which takes a ton of energy in order to make hydrogen energy. So you're pulling in solar and wind in order to get the tax dollars to do this. You have to use green energy to make hydrogen. But to make 1 ton of hydrogen energy, you produce 9 tons of CO2, carbon dioxide. So the whole movement of reducing carbon capture, we're all going to die because we have too much carbon dioxide. And we're creating an industry, hydrogen, that will produce exponential amounts of carbon dioxide in the process of making hydrogen. And then they get more money if they capture that hydrogen, pipe it in big pipelines across the state. And there's a map that I found of carbon pipelines across the whole United States, Texas, Oklahoma. Right now, they're fighting them in Iowa, South Dakota, and we down here on the South don't think it's coming for us, but it is. And so these carbon capture pipelines, they pressurized shoot the carbon dioxide through these pipelines, and then they inject it underground. Well, if it makes it and the pipeline itself doesn't have maybe an earthquake or a flood and burst that pipeline, which if that happens, carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen. So it displaces, it goes to the low spots. So if you're in a valley, if you're on a lake, that carbon dioxide is going to displace all of your oxygen. It's completely odorless. And your engines won't work that rely on oxygen. So your emergency vehicles can't get to you and you'll suffocate. So if you have an explosion, there's that. And then once they get it and they shoot it underground, if the carbon dioxide touches water, like say an aquifer, it turns to carbonic acid, which then dissolves rock and degrades your aquifer and your drinking water. So
Yeah, so it's a lot of information and a lot of very concerning information. So I know that a lot of this is new both to you as well as it's new information to myself as well. So if we are interested in figuring out how we can enact any kind of change, whether that's legislative change or changes that we can make within our own smaller communities, what do we do?
right. And I am, an interior designer turned donkey milker. So please understand that my explanation is very simplified. There is a group called Free Soil Foundation, which I'm now involved with, and they have been fighting the carbon capture. They are very knowledgeable, and I'm learning a lot from them. And they are fighting it in South Dakota. They're fighting it because they're trying to do eminent domain to take people's property and force these carbon capture pipelines through them. Oh, and then transmission lines, which we all know the cancer clusters and everything of having giant transmission lines. I discovered there is a federal push for transmission lines throughout the Midwest, and they're trying to just take the land for all these transmission lines as well. I'm not sure why, but in Oklahoma, it's 18 miles wide, a swath 18 miles wide. So there's thousands of acres at risk. I don't have any idea why they're putting in 18 miles wide for a transmission line, unless they also have plans to put solar panels under it or carbon capture pipelines or some other land grab, essentially. So we all just need to be paying attention. So I'm trying to educate people. I have a Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches is my Facebook, and I have that on Instagram. And I'm trying to just put this out in bite-sized pieces of information that hopefully people can understand. But it's very important that we look at what's happening locally, go to our county commissioners, ask them to put in resolutions against some of these industries and ask them to take back their power as a county and protect the people. It's part of their duty to protect the health and safety of people. So we need to go to our county commissioners and get involved on a local level, and then go to your state level and start paying attention to what are the bills they have passed. You can go to something called legiscan.com, look on your state, and then you can search words, and all the bills that have been passed using those words will pop up. which was really eye-opening to me and terrifying because I plugged in hydrogen and all the bills that our state has passed for hydrogen. And one of the things about hydrogen, H2O, are water. So one of the forms of hydrogen takes water and takes the hydrogen out of water. So there's legislation coming through saying they can take our water to make energy. And you start looking at this overall picture and you say, we need farms for food and we need water to drink. And it seems to me like they're making AI and data mining and all of these tech things, they're putting them over people. And we're feeding an agenda to enslave us rather than feeding people. And when our legislators are doing things, and you can go and then look up those bills, you can look up the committee meetings, and then go to your state and watch those committee meetings and see how they explain it. And when they're saying in committee meetings, when one legislator says, what is the point of this carbon bill? And the other legislator says, greed, 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 then you know that this is not about saving the world. This is not about doing the right thing. This is about money. And it's all about money. And if I actually found a document on Oklahoma.gov showing investors where hydrogen is now and where it has been, and how in the next 5 years it's going to skyrocket and what a great investment it's going to be. And I'm sitting there going, this is why all of these people want this through and they want to silence me, because they're investing in these things. Start looking at what your legislators are investing in and start holding them accountable and replace them.
So who is the fight against? And I say that, and obviously there's probably a much broader question to be asked here. For example, we know that throughout the Midwest that foreign entities have been buying up farmland, in record numbers as of late. Even Bill Gates has been buying up farmland, so it appears that this is a much larger agenda having to do with bankrupting farmers, purchasing farmland, utilizing that farmland for financial gain. But at the same time, there's a human and ethical argument to be made here that if they are human themselves, why would they be contributing to their own demise or the demise of future generations? So I think the appeal is sometimes lost on the humanistic argument because, even the whole argument about having to reduce carbon emissions, for example, is rather ludicrous. It's always struck me as very strange considering everything that is living is a carbon-based life form. So so we are essentially requesting our own demise. So big picture, who is it that we're looking at? Are these large entities like the BlackRocks of the world? Are these greedy individuals, the big billionaires like Bill Gates, for example? Or is it more insidious? Is it reached smaller scale farmers and people of that nature who are looking now to profit off of some of these endeavors?
So the love of money is the root of all evil. And most of these people that are signing up for these things are doing it for a love of money, whether it's Humaner, a wind turbine lease, a solar lease. They are disregarding what's good for their neighbors, for the next generation, and they're doing what's good for their pocketbook. And that goes then to the legislators. And most of them, I do believe, unfortunately, I guess, are just ignorant. And they're doing this out of greed, Greed, greed. And so they see money and they're doing it for those reasons. They don't know and they don't see the big picture. So I'm going and speaking to some different groups that are involved in political, arenas and trying to give them a rundown, hopefully, that makes sense of how all of these things play together. Because we have legislators that see a bill and it's a hydrogen bill and they sign off on that because that looks good. And then they see a bill that's to give tax credits to wind turbines. So they sign off on that because that looks good. And they're not hearing the other side of the story, and they're not putting together the full picture of all of this and how it's going to wipe out farmland and how it's going to put our water at risk. And you don't have anyone speaking out and saying, hey, this is a problem. Because if you do, then you have people criticizing you and saying, oh, you're an environmental extremist. Oh, you're anti-farmer. Oh, you're anti all of the property rights, all these things. And I'm trying to explain to them, no, I'm pro farmer. I am pro food. I'm pro rural living. And that's what we're about. And I'm pro health. And they don't see the full picture. They sign leases and then they can't talk. So that's another problem. They can't talk about it if they have a problem. But the overall, and this is what I've come to, I have people contacting me and saying, is it the World Economic Forum? Is it Bill Gates? Is it China? Is it this? Is it that? I believe in God. I believe in good and evil. And this is anti-human. This is to steal, kill, and destroy. And what is coming if we don't stand and come together and all of us understand what is coming for us and what the true agenda is to enslave humanity? They want us eating cloned meat. They want us eating fake food that will sicken us and kill us. And we have a choice right now, and we can support farmers. We can buy direct from farmers, give them a better profit margin where they can say no to these things. And we need these regenerative ag big names that have influence to come out and say, we're going to come to these communities that are tempted to take sludge and help them transition to regenerative agriculture so they can be profitable. And it can't just be me and it can't just be you. We need big names to come with us and help us. And this is just a hush hush. Nobody wants to talk about it and nobody wants to stick their neck out. And we're all have our neck on the chopping block. So I get emotional about it. And, I had somebody reaching out to me the other day and he was adamantly for sludge. And he was very kind. And so I was kindly trying to educate him. And I finally went to his profile and his young, beautiful wife had died of lung cancer. And people say, oh, just be patient. Eventually everyone will get there. And I'm like, we're running out of time. We are running out of time. And every day that they take another truckload of sludge to another farm or sign another lease for wind turbines or sign another lease for solar or carbon capture pipelines, we're losing another farm. We're losing more acreage and we will never get that back. So they're not making more dirt.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a very sobering thought. And, it takes a lot to render me completely speechless, but yeah, I frankly don't know what to say. It's very frightening when I think of the future for our children, particularly the ones that we talk about very often here on the podcast, kids that have been struggling with, things like autism and PANS and PANDAS and diabetes and autoimmune disease. And of course, as parents ourselves, many of our parents are also struggling with many of those things. And just lost a couple to cancer, a couple of the moms that I was familiar with. So it gets to the point where it does affect everyone. And unfortunately, a lot of times it takes this Herculean effort to really explain to people why these things are detrimental, not only for people around them, but for themselves as well. And if they don't feel the effects tomorrow, they might feel them, in another few months or another few years, or God forbid, it's their children who experience those things. And so, for a long time, I've really been interested in regenerative agriculture. I've done a few podcast episodes on how that can really help, create healthy food, healthy environments. It's incredibly beneficial for the animals as well as, the plants and the humans, bringing back plants that had been thought to be extinct because we're now, creating healthy soils again. creating healthy animals that have these amazing gut flora, which then, if we consume those animal products, then, we're reaping the benefits of that beneficial bacteria, all of these things that play such a huge role in the overall picture of our health. So, as difficult as it is to talk about these really horrific and frightening and terrifying things, I do have faith in humanity. I have faith in, our ability to rally together to create deep understanding and empathy and get to a point where we value humans more than we value, the latest and
Technology.
greatest tech, you
Yeah.
know. Um, I think we really have become so disconnected as a society, but I do feel things shifting back in the other direction. And I know our time is limited, and hopefully we can, turn the ship back around before, we go barreling into that iceberg, so to speak. Okay. Well, as heavy as a topic that is, I do want to make sure that we provide hope for our families and for those who are listening. One of the ways that you are doing that in educating families and giving back to the community is by hosting the annual Hee Haw for Health event. This will be the third time that I will be attending. I'm really excited about it. I love going up to the farm. I keep teasing Saundra that I'm going to steal one of her donkeys or something, ride one home or something. They're just such gentle creatures, and they're just so amazing to be around. But the event itself, I would highly encourage if anybody is interested in learning more about what Saundra's doing at the Donkey Dairy, about what people like Teresa Holler are doing with the Nutrimetics products. And what I'm doing with homeopathy, I really encourage any of you who are interested to join us. And it's not just, boring speakers. The event itself really does create a very welcoming community environment. Kids are welcome. There's always plenty of things for the kids to do, including seeing all the amazing animals that they have there at the farm. And Saundra always creates, things like little crafts for them to do. And there's, things to climb on and all of those amazing things. Saundra, if you could just tell us a little bit more about the Hee Haw for Health and where people can go to get their tickets.
Absolutely. They can go to heehaw4health.com and get tickets there. The tickets are minimal priced. I think it's $5 for an adult. So it really doesn't even cover the event, but we want to keep it a very low price, and we'll probably go up as it gets closer to the event because it's harder for me to get more chairs. But we want people to come because a lot of people believe they can just watch it all online later. And unfortunately, we've had speakers like Dr. Heather Gessling, who spoke about things that then I uploaded that to YouTube and I immediately got it shut down. So there's a lot of things that we're talking about even today that may get censored. They don't want you to hear. And so some of the talks will be online, some will not. We encourage people to come as well for the camaraderie and to meet other parents and actually talk to these doctors one-on-one. And we have St. Nicholas coming with his donkey again, which is always a highlight for the kids. And he actually had a donkey in Germany, not Rudolph. So it's just a super fun day. We have people tell us that was their kid's favorite day ever in their life, which is what we want. We want them. We have tents set up for the practitioners to actually visit with parents in a non-threatening, not a doctor's office environment. We wanted it to be a place where they can go for a hike, where they can play, they can get their hands dirty, and they can just be a kid in an outside environment where it's healthy. That's part of what we're fighting for, so that we can get that outdoor air and microbiome and just experience God's creation and his animals. And it's a great day to be here, and really encourage parents to bring another caregiver to watch the kids. We don't have childcare and it is a working farm. So bring someone else to watch your kids so that you can really laser in and focus on these doctors and what they're going to share with you. We want to empower parents because I understand the cost involved of having chronically ill children. And every doctor's appointment, everything that you're going to, you need to absorb everything you can and implement it. And so we're trying to give you access to these incredible practitioners like Erin, who are going to share stuff with you that you can take home and implement and not break the bank and take some baby steps toward health. We always say it's not just donkey milk, it's not just one thing. We have to do all of these things. And that's expensive because most of these things are not covered by insurance. So we're trying to be a part of the change. And one of the things we also provide are through the nonprofit, through the generous donations of others, are scholarships to families that are financially struggling so that they can apply that to go see some of these practitioners and get some of the testing done that's so expensive. Because I am a parent of now 2 chronically ill children, and I understand how hard it is. And I don't want anyone to ever say, I could have gotten my kid better if I had had more money. That's something no parent should ever struggle with at night and lay awake at night. And so, I'm terrible at fundraising. It is a nonprofit. God always provides what we need. We have never had to turn somebody away because we didn't have a dollar in the bank to give them. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. And, I don't want to ever share something that makes people feel overwhelmed, like, why try? I believe that God puts challenges in front of us, whether it's pandas, so that we will discover homeopathy or discover donkey milk, and then we'll share that with others. So if he puts a challenge in front of me, like exposing me to humaner and wind turbines and all of these other things, then he put it in our path for a reason so that we could do something about it. And I don't think that I believe God gives us the power through him to do something about it. And all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So I'm asking everyone to come alongside us and do something, whatever it is that you can do. Talk to a neighbor, talk to a friend, educate somebody, and encourage them to learn the truth about these things that we're being brainwashed into believing a lie, so that we can choose better and do better for our children.
Yeah, share the podcast.
Exactly.
All right, Saundra, it has been, I don't know that I can say it's a pleasure, but not because you aren't pleasurable to be around, but just because of the really, heavy topics today. But I do want to lighten the mood a little bit and ask our 8 rapid fire questions. I ask these 8 questions of every single one of our guests. They're just fun, designed to kind of give us a little bit of insight into who you are as a person, as a human being, as an amazing mom, and have a little bit of fun with it. So, number 1, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Donkey milk.
How did I know you were going to say that? All right. All right, tell us something most people don't know about you.
Well, you already told him I was interior designer, so there's that. I studied in Europe and in college, and I taught English in what had been East Germany.
Very cool. I did not know that about you. And I've known you for a long time. All right.
I have some experience with the whole communist realm.
All right. If I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
That's funny because right now I'm really into Johnny Cash.
Nice.
And it's not really the happy stuff. It's the Man in Black and stuff like that. And I'm like, I love him because he told his story and he told the truth. And I feel like that's what we need more of, people telling the truth through their story. And so however you can tell your story, do it.
Absolutely. What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
My daughter makes the most amazing paleo fudge. And it's almond butter, and I mean, it's all the things. It's so good. She created it, and it's gone as soon as she makes it. So I don't want to make it very often.
That's one of those things you sneak in the pantry, right?
We did a booth at the MedMaps conference, and she made them in little jelly jars, and I was giving them away to practitioners, and they were coming back and asking if they could buy it. Like, no, we don't do fudge. We do donkey dog.
All right. What is the most influential book you've ever read?
I would have to say, and I know this is kitsch, but the Bible, because you can open it up and it's living and it's active and it's still applicable today. And, you know, it is true. We are supposed to be good stewards of the earth. And, recently I've been reading Nebuchadnezzar and Belteshazzar, and I was so discouraged because I was like, these people have so much power. And it was the story of the hand that writes on the wall to the leader who had exalted himself, and your reign is over. And so I have to give it to God sometimes and go, you know what? When he's ready for these industries and these powers and all these whatever's behind all this to be done, it's done. And I don't have to do it. And so that to me is so encouraging. We are supposed to do our part. I really get annoyed with people who sit back and say, well, it's all going to happen anyway, and we don't have to do anything, because being a coward is actually listed as one of the sins in Revelation. So if we're sitting back and being cowardly, then that's on us.
Absolutely. What does the word revolution mean to you?
Well, I'm just thinking remedy revolution now. Um, so revolution to me, I don't think that we're going to win by some violent revolution. There is no definable enemy that we go and attack right now. This is really good against evil. So I feel like we have to have a revolution of our hearts and minds and the way we think and the way we believe and the way we treat each other. And all of this would end if we would treat each other with respect and dignity and love, because we would never do to our neighbors what these things are asking us to do. So
Right.
I feel like that's the revolution we need.
Absolutely. Acting out of love versus acting out of fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
Homeopathy. You set that one up.
I know. Because I've known you too long. So. Okay, lastly, if you could impart one piece of wisdom upon our listeners, what would that be?
That's a tough one, but I would say don't be afraid. Act in love, and our battle isn't with flesh and blood. And so we have to be trusting God and trusting that this is way bigger than us, and we do our part. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so when I feel overwhelmed and when I feel like we can never win and why try, we have to go back to that and know that this is a bigger battle than us, and keep fighting and keep loving and do it out of love. Because when you hear the stories and when you know that there's people being harmed every day, and if we love them, we will speak for them and stand in the gap for them.
I couldn't agree more. For those of you listening, please go to heehawforhealth.com, get your tickets to come join Saundra and I. We are readily available to speak with all the parents and the kiddos. And I personally love doing that. I love the fact that I get to just sit down and talk with people, which I don't always get to do at some of these bigger events. So I am really excited to be there September 21st. Go out, get your tickets. Also, please go to Oklahoma Donkey Dairy as well if you're interested in the skincare, which helps fund the Oklahoma Donkey Dairy. It's amazing stuff. They make this incredible soap, and I just, I can't say enough about my dear friend Saundra. She's been such a lighthouse for me throughout all of our journey. And I feel like we grew up together in a way.
I know. It's shocking. I actually did a search on Panda's Facebook groups, and I remember 10 years ago now when you and I met online, and you were like it. You were the only group I could find that was doing things naturally and helping our kids naturally. And so it was about 7 of us in this little group, and we all just knew each other, and we were battling together. And this is what's working for my kid. This is what's working for my kid. And it was so encouraging to have you. And so yesterday I did a search on Pandas groups, and I was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it was pandas, 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 pandas. And it was heartbreaking how did this happen? How are there so many children and so many groups now that this shouldn't be the way it is? We need to end this. And so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for starting that group years ago where we could have camaraderie, and thank you for this podcast now to reach even more people, and what you're doing, individually for your patients as well. I just love it. So thank you.
Thank you for being here, everybody. We'll see y'all next time. Take care.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.